Okay, you were yelling at me during the game today. So, I mean, yeah, where's the list? Like I've been alpha too. Every time
First thing, second to third question. All right. I will put that phone on somebody's here.
the morning.
And then you're gonna find it yourself?
Yeah.
That's the way it goes. Like, not yet.
And it's gonna be as hilarious. Remember how to get back to here today, not me. I didn't come in here for that. So like,
Good evening, folks. Welcome to this meeting of the Montoursville Area School District Board of Directors on this Tuesday, August 10th, 2021 at 7:04 p.m. At this time, I would ask first of all, I'll keep the order. How's that? I'll ask Madam Secretary, would you take roll call?
Mr. Albert.
Here.
Here. Mr. Bumble is absent this evening. Mrs. Merrill. Mr. Robbins.
Here.
Mr. Schimmel.
Here.
Mr. Snell.
Here.
And Mr. Olson.
Here. This time I would invite the public and the board to rise and join with me in the pledge of the flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Superintendent, are there any recognitions or presentations this evening? Moving on then, student representatives, do you have anything for us tonight? No?
I mean, other than band camp going on.
Band camp, all right. How's that going? What?
We're getting tan. So,
Okay, all right. With that, then, we'll move now to the reading of the minutes, the approval of the minutes from the July 19th meeting. Or did you notice any corrections that might be needed? If not, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
Motion to approve.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Let's have it. This time now we'll have what we call the prior presentation. It's a 5-minute presentation per person. They get this position, I guess, in the lineup by submitting a request earlier in the week to the superintendent, and they provide what they're going to be discussing with the board and presenting to the board. So first up tonight would be Pastor Matt Wagner from Twin Hills Church of the Nazarene.
Good evening, board. Community, you guys doing well?
We're doing fine.
I've seen some smiling faces today. That brings me joy. My name is Matthew Wagner. I am the vision pastor at Twin Hills Church of the Nazarene. Now you might be wondering what vision pastor means. Well, that's just a way of saying that I am the lead pastor. But I believe in vision, because the Word of God tells us that vision is important. Without vision, people will perish. And so that's why it's important for us as leaders to have vision. And I am greatly appreciative of you, board, for the vision and the leadership that each and every one of you has shown. I'm going to pray today, and the emphasis on the prayer that I have for us today is unity. So if you would you bow your heads with me as we pray together. Heavenly Father, we've come to you tonight asking for your guidance, for your wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. And I pray that your presence be our guide tonight. And let us gather not out of agendas or personal preferences, but let this gathering be an extension of your love for you and for each other. Lord, I pray that you teach us to be governed by your love without thought of self. And personally, I seek to make your presence to be my goal of all things, to make your presence my very essence. So I pray tonight, help us all tonight to be resolved and satisfied only in you. I pray that your presence would be our greatest gift to us all, more than we seek even spiritual gifts or even earthly gifts, or even the power that they bring us. Touch all of our hearts tonight to pursue the comfort of your presence. Remind us again that we cannot do anything unless you enable us to do it. It's then and only then you will give us the sufficient strength to do your will for your purposes. Everything outside of that is done through our own selfishness and through our own power. And when we are left alone and you step away and we step out of your light, of your presence, and you leave us to ourselves, we will never make the right decisions. For you, Lord, must stop our failing and fix what is amiss in us. Lord, I also pray for both the board members and for those in attendance today. Let us be reminded that even when we fail in our duty as an elected official or even a citizen, that you still extend the grace of opportunity to both people. And I pray, Father, that we will turn from our pointless murmuring, our sarcastic put-downs, or any type of biting comments or destructive criticism. For none of those things represent you, and I don't believe they represent the heartbeat of this community. They only represent our fallen nature. However, when we fail, when we see failure in someone else, the right path is to show the grace that you have granted to us. So teach us, O Lord, that in our own anger, we can never focus on the real issues. And fill us with your grace, Lord, as we make decisions that might affect not only the students, but the staff, the faculty, the alumni, and the friends of Montoursville. Grant us this day your love, your grace, your peace, and your direction through your presence, to make this community a better place that breathes unity. Yes, we truly are better together when we are united together. For we pray together in the name of your Son. Yes, he is the Prince of Peace, the great comforter of all. His name is Jesus. Amen. Thank you.
Next up is Michael Kraft.
I actually brought handouts.
Is there 4 different handouts here?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
So thank you for the opportunity. I'll wait till. All right, good.
Are we blocking part of this?
Okay, so the first slide, and I appreciate the opportunity, Michael Kraft, 71 Carriage Square, Montoursville. Presentation request is just maybe a more legible version of what I had submitted in handwriting to the site. Just for background, because it may become important, that's my background there. You can Google me, you can take a look at what the country does, what my company does. I'm currently Senior Vice President for Advanced Technology and Programs and Technical Counsel. Full disclosure, I am a Textron PAC contributor, and most of that money goes to the Republican Party. I'm also involved in U.S. congressional engagement on aerospace and national defense issues. So the things that I work on are kind of the things that you see right here, everything from robotic combat vehicles to automatic weapons to drones to things that carry M1 Abrams tanks on the back of it. So if you want to conclude on my political leanings, you can conclude from there, obviously left-wing on that sort of things. But what I want to be here today is to go through critical race theory after paying attention to a couple of things that are circulating. First of all, and I think that there was a good article published in the newspaper today, CRT is a specialized legal studies framework developed in the 80s and 90s. It's only taught at a few law schools. It's a way to interrogate policies, mainly the failed policies of some of the civil rights legislation in the 1960s had not resulted in the effects. It's not widely taught in law schools. It is not taught in public schools. In fact, in law schools, you may find it as a 3-credit course at Yale, but you won't find it as a course, I think, when I check the website at Dickinson, for example. It is not the definition of CRT that is in the Snell resolution. So what is in the Snell resolution, and I'm going to say that because that's the only thing I have, is it's a weapon. And Christopher Rufo, who is a conservative activist, invented this weapon by taking a hot-button topic of legal scholarship and turning it into a weapon, something that people would fear. Okay, this article, which I've included in your packet, is from the New Yorker, published in June of 2021 this year. And it outlines how this topic, okay, turned from critical race theory into something that was weaponized and played upon people's fears by expanding its definition. Now, you have a weapon, now you need to decide to use it. So Christopher Rufo went to Fox News. You also find that in there he found a voice, they propagated out, and the Republican Party decided to use critical race theory as a key campaign strategy because it would get the vote out in the voter base that they lost in the last election. Deploying the weapon is not only good enough to include it in an article and on the news occasionally, now you need to make a movement out of it. So what you will find, without a lot of research, is several grassroots organizations, one is which is Parents Defending Education, another grassroots organization which is No Left Turn in Education, which is, you can see the banner here, Education Not Indoctrination. You can see another one called Citizens for Renewing America. And Citizens for Renewing America will actually provide you, and I put it in your packet, a handbook on how to prohibit critical race theory in our schools. I think it runs to the total about 37 pages, which I looked there. It's literally how to expand the definition of critical race theory, how to engage with boards, engage with the public, and sell this story, which is based on Christopher Rufo's weaponization of critical race theory. You want to coordinate the attack. So now what you see is you see Citizens for Renewing America pairing up with Parents Defending Education and providing questions to ask school officials. They also provide template resolutions for people to use to try to get through board meetings. One of which I provided you in your copy of materials there, which is a rather extensive version. You can see lightened up versions of it at various districts around the United States. So, provided you the toolkit, and you coordinate the attack, and then you expand it. Little did I know is that not only are we under attack in our history courses, but in our math and science we are indoctrinating our children. So you can see from here the languages is there's anti-racist pushes in math class, anti-racist pushes in mathematics instruction, science, you name it, let's go find it and let's put a label on it because this stuff sells. And then you expand it again to include big tech, to include critical race theory again, and then election integrity. So this isn't hard to really figure out if you follow the money. So if you follow the money, you take a look at what's behind the donations that power the nationwide organizations of Foundation for Individual Rights and Education, Citizens for Renewing America, Parents Defending Education, Moms for Liberty, No Left Term, and VILA Education Fund, which is a fund that we don't have vouchers, I don't think, in Pennsylvania, but it's a way to fund people's interest in voucher programs for other schools. The Koch Foundation, the Walton Foundation, and the Lambie Foundation put millions into the establishment of the base organizations, and then they kind of spawn out local groups by providing an infrastructure to carry the message. And interestingly, they also sponsor a very progressive organization over to the left-wing side, which contains the stuff that you should be afraid of. the invented story of critical race theory. So you follow the money, and it isn't hard to do because you go on the IRS website and you can find that these organizations are not grassroots organized. The website, social media pages, and supporting references are highly sophisticated, professionally done, expensive, and they provide significant in-kind support. The end objectives, and this is important, rely upon local chapter action to provide vehicles for funded litigation. And you can find that as a vehicle on Parents Defending Education, where you can sign up at your group, your parent organization, and submit an incident report of something you think went wrong relative to these principles. All of this, a lot of people have guessed the quote here, all this was inspired by the principle, which is quite true within itself, that in the big lie there is always a certain force of credibility, because the broad masses of a nation are always more easily corrupted in the deeper strata of their emotional nature than consciously or voluntarily. And thus in the primitive simplicity of their minds, they will readily fall victims to the big lie than the small lie, since they themselves often tell small lies in little matters, but would be ashamed to resort to large-scale falsehoods. Anybody want to guess whose that quote is from? Gross moving. So a few questions. What organization provided the basis for the Snell resolution? If it's passed, how would teachers teach history? Are we banning discussions on how women obtained voting rights in 1920? Are we banning discussions on how the U.S. Constitution slaves were treated as property and counted only 3/5 as a person for tax purposes? What other topics do we ban because they made devices within the broad definitions that the resolution proposes? Do we prohibit talking about the fact that a sitting president sought to induce others to overturn a legitimate election result? What happens to staff and faculty found in conflict with the Snell resolution? So the recommendations here is this resolution shouldn't be passed. It's unduly influenced. It will do nothing to address legitimate concerns on curriculum development or teachers' handling of current day issues. The board should act, to reestablish the curriculum director position, which was eliminated a while ago, or equivalent, and engage on a proactive, improved communication with the public regarding curriculum content. Your policy already covers this, however, you don't have the position covering it anymore. And it's not as proactive as it should be. As part of the curriculum communications director position renewal, should establish ongoing briefings for the public, faculty, or staff on how to appropriately navigate the current day issues outside of the noise of left and right-wing propaganda machines. And this is what it is, it's propaganda. So the closing remarks here is our children and our community are not under threat from critical race theory or other divisive topics. The real threat is believing the left and right-wing propaganda machines as the 2022-2024 elections approach. Conspiracy theories, divisiveness, partisanship increases viewership, it sells advertising, and gets people to the polls. Social media amplifies the above globally at the speed of light, and it's going to get worse. We don't need the resolution, we do need better communication. Thank you.
Public should know that the presiding officer is allowed to extend the presentation if he deems necessary. This presentation, when you agree with or disagree with it, was consistent, it was well thought out, informative, maybe you believe it, maybe you don't. Point is, it wasn't just somebody up there. So I have that latitude to do that, and I chose to do that.
5 minutes.
So, did you hear what I said? I have the latitude to extend it, I did that as presiding officer. I also have the latitude to suspend the meeting if you're not going to be, keep properly order. So, our next speaker is Kyle Taylor.
Mr. Schimmel.
No, this is time for the prior presentation. No, we can talk later.
You set precedents.
Sure did.
You set precedents that anybody that speaks.
It's time for Kyle Taylor to speak.
Everybody hear me okay? Kyle Taylor, 172 Woodland Court. According to Matthew Nielsen, who is the founder of the Educational Freedom Institute, CRT essentially teaches that Quote, "Everything in our world is power, the distribution of which is mediated by race. Every human construction, from governments to homeschool co-ops, are embedded in racial structures that fundamentally build or dismantle racism and white supremacy. All people, regardless of socioeconomic status, location, or personality, cannot help but perpetuate or undermine systems of racial oppression." I just want to say right from the outset regarding the idea of CRT being nothing more than an academic theory confined to the legal sphere, this is not the 80s or the 90s anymore, it's 2021. The basic tenets of CRT are now being spoon-fed to our children in schools across the nation. Just to give one example, a school in Buffalo taught students that all white people, sorry, I don't know if the mic is picking me up there. All white people perpetuate systemic racism and had kindergartners watch a video of dead black children warning them about racist police and state-sanctioned violence. So as you can see, its tentacles are getting into everything. Sometimes it's blatant, right out in the open for everyone to see. Other times it sits in the background, giving rise to seemingly innocent efforts such as diversity, equity, and inclusion. On the surface, it can seem attractive. After all, who doesn't want justice or inclusivity? This ideological cancer thrives off of well-meaning people, which is often how it takes hold. But before long, CRT adopters are seeing racism behind every bush. You may have heard the saying that if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Well, this is exactly what CRT does with any kind of, This is what CRT does with any kind of perceived racial disparity. It has only one answer, systemic racism. It is a lens that doesn't hold up to facts or reason, but instead appeals to emotion and the subjective experiences of those deemed oppressed. When you get down to the roots, CRT is obsessively focused on power and divides everyone accordingly. And that's the goal, division. Divide and conquer, destruction and revolution, taking cues from its distant ancestor, Karl Marx, and thoroughly saturated in the ever-skeptical and truthless outlook of postmodernism. Now I'd like to bring this back to home field. Why should our district here guard against and oppose CRT? For one, CRT is counterproductive and unnecessary in combating racism on any level because of its failure to diagnose the problem accurately, always assuming instead of proving, which then leads to divisive and corrosive attitudes, words, and actions. It is a disservice to Black, Indigenous, and people of color who instead deserve something more rigorous that actually works and doesn't sacrifice the truth on the path to justice and reconciliation. Often, when districts push CRT to combat real disparities, they are simply deflecting their own complicity in these disparities and shifting blame over to white students and the society at large. Simply put, improving education itself will do far more for minorities than this cynical theory. Secondly, CRT teaches children that America was founded on white supremacy and that is divided between white oppressors and non-white liberators. This is disempowering, harmful, and inaccurate. Children who learn this will grow to despise their country and become resentful towards one another. Lastly, and more personally speaking, I want my daughter's education here to reinforce what their mother and I teach them at home, to face life and all its challenges with generosity, gratitude, charitable conversation, contentment, being lovers of truth, and living peaceably with all as much as it is within their power to do so. We will not be encouraging any type of unwarranted victimhood mentality. They will come to know and understand our nation's unvarnished past, but they will not do so through such a pitiful and simplistic lens like CRT that places racism and power at the center of everything. Such a lens will not be positively promoted in our household, and it is my hope that the district will not either. We'll do the same. Thank you.
Next is Brenda Override.
Well, let's see if I twist the right one. Okay, hopefully mine is not rambling. I don't have any beautiful screenshots or anything like that to put up on the board, but you know, we're going to expect that leniency for ourselves, for everyone in the future. Brenda Oberheim, 192 Woodland Court. Critical race theory, critical theory, is an attempt to teach our children to judge themselves and their classmates by their racial background instead of their content, the content of their character. CRT is sometimes called by other names, causing it to not be as easily identified. Other names for it are SEL, social emotional learning, equity education, or inclusion, to name a few. Regardless of the attempts to disguise it, the goal of the information does not change. The goal is to turn Martin Luther King Jr.'s speech, "I Have a Dream," upside down. Pennsylvania, along with 25 other state legislatures, are currently crafting legislation to ban the practice of teaching CRT. Voting to approve a resolution is the right choice for our district. Parents of Montoursville students should be given the assurance that CRT in any form or called by any other name will not be taught by teachers or staff. This accountability is important because the information CRT teaches is divisive and wrong. A person without any skin in this game may say, CRT should not be taught. However, a resolution is not necessary. I have kids that are currently enrolled in Montoursville, so I have a lot of skin in this game. I want the district to give the parents as much written reassurance as possible. We need more than just the words of teachers and staff that it won't be taught. A resolution should be voted in to hold them accountable. There are some teachers in other districts that have vowed to teach it even if their district has forbid it. I've heard it mentioned, we don't have to worry about this in Montoursville. A statement like that couldn't be farther from the truth. Mifflinburg is an example of a small town letting CRT influences creep in. The district accepted an offer for a free news source called Newsella. Turns out it pushed activist propaganda. Another example that led to CRT becoming an issue in Mifflinburg was the political agenda of their superintendent. The superintendent focused on hiring politically like-minded teachers and administrators. I would like for the board to become more active and attentive to the new hires for our district. My advice to the very small group that wants this CRT-CT garbage taught is do it on your own time. We do not want activism pushed on our students or our teachers trained in it. Please help us stop the state from trying to use taxpayer dollars to push this oppressive, racist agenda. This leads me to the topic of curriculum transparency. There is legislation put forth by Representative Lewis that all curriculum must be provided to parents. Representative Joe Ham signed onto this bill. Could Montoursville be proactive concerning curriculum transparency and provide all curriculum before this bill is even voted into law? Doing so would be in the best interest of students, parents, and taxpayers. Right to Knows should not have to be filed for curriculum information. Please know that many Right to Knows filed with Mrs. Basin recently are being denied, and our expensive solicitor is reaping the financial benefits of our tax money. It's becoming more apparent that she does not want to share information with the public. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I do not like that things have been pushed on our kids by the CDC, the DOH, or the government agencies who are trying to promote CRT. The motivation is not the same in each scenario, but the consequence for parents is. It causes us to have to fight to protect our kids. The teachers' unions are not exempt from blame. They are part of the problem. As far as pushing masks and CRT are concerned, for over a year, now teachers' unions have made it apparent they are political entities. They've become bullies full of progressive rhetoric attempting to silence teachers who disagree. For example, the NEA, America's largest teachers union, pledged hundreds of thousands of dollars promoting CRT and fighting the legislation attempts to ban it in the K-12 schools. The NEA went even farther and gave more money to find and distribute opposition research on the organizations that oppose CRT. This proves how far the teachers' unions have gotten away from focusing on real education for our students. It is also proof of the fight we as parents and school boards are up against, but they have overplayed their hands. Many parents and teachers are making their voices heard in opposition to this progressive agenda. Please vote to protect our district and students by supporting the resolution to oppose CRT.
Next up is Saray Alvarado.
I don't have printouts, I'm sorry. I'll turn the laptop towards you guys. It's not. There we go. Okay. I'm Saray. That's the last slide.
I can't hear you.
Just a moment.
Saray, your presentation's up here.
It's behind you, yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't think about handouts. I've never been in this auditorium before. Did I touch that? Okay, you don't want, okay. Okay. Good evening, I'm Saray Altabrando. I'm a borough resident at 416 Cypress Street in the borough, and I'm also a parent of a student in the district. So I was going to start by saying this isn't about me, any of this. But after what I just heard, instead of my intro about how I learned about the project and stuff, I would like to say, in my personal life, I'm just presenting this info right now. I am an anti-racist activist, and all of these very scary things. And I don't try to indoctrinate my own children. I'm only interested in critical thinking and getting an education that will prepare them to go forward as citizens and into vocations or further education. So if I am problematic because of my personal beliefs, I am not here to talk about them tonight as much as I would like to right now. I'm here to talk about community building. Okay, so after what we just heard, what does this make you think or feel? Let's skip ahead. We skipped the word justice on blue. I gotta go back, I'm sorry. Here we go. They moved. Okay, well, we were gonna look at the big words and see how we feel about them. And now how do we feel about justice when it's the definition? Conformity to truth, fact, or reason, the principle or ideal of right action. And liberty, the quality or state of being free, positive enjoyment of various social, political, or economic rights and privileges. Does that change how we feel? It's liberty and justice for all. They are not opposing ideals or values, and we should all share both of them. So the Hate Has No Home Here project, like Homing County, has been kicked off since about July, and I'm here to introduce it to the Montoursville School Board. I had to go back to ancient Rome to find a quote about community that didn't come from a source that might be divisive to this audience. So, you know, Rome wasn't built in a day, but it fell in one. We were born to unite with our fellow men and to join in community with the human race. So what is the Hate Has No Home Here project? The Hate Has No Home Here project
is an open source project nationwide that promotes community building through having face-to-face interactions and sharing meals. It is not partisan. It is not affiliated with any political party, candidate, organization. Everything about it is free to use online. You just can't, with the permissions that they give. And it's not for profit or fundraising. Everything is always to be made available by optional donation. The idea behind the Hate Has No Home Here project is that it's difficult to hate people we know. Like we were talking about these media machines, I might disagree that the misinformation is equally spread, but it's not happening here. We share a lot in common, and the reason that this is a community-centered project instead of a large nationwide one is it's because it's about our school, our town, our county, the places that we go, the groups that we belong to, and the values that we share. When we put up our signs or the stickers that I'm giving out, it's supposed to remind each other and ourselves of our values and that we share them. So how does it work? So, like I said, this is not in any way about me. I can be completely removed from this if you don't like me or find me divisive. All of the graphics are available free to download and use at hatehasnohomehere.org, and I put the asterisks because that will lead you to a WordPress site that has all the art and everything like that. Hatehasnohomehere.com, of course, someone purchased and is selling them for a profit. So if you go to somewhere that's asking you for money, you're at the wrong place. Hatehasnohomehere.com will have the signs that you can download for yourself if you choose or have printed anywhere that you'd like. I've also set up a PayPal money pool. All the money that goes into that will go directly to the graphic hive from the PayPal money pool to make more items available in community locations. I was distributing them at First Friday. I distribute them to the Lycoming County Libertarians. We have representatives from Assistant Chief Bolt and his wife Amy in Williamsport were some of the people kicking off with us, the preschool director in Southside. I really tried to reach to the edges of people I knew so that it would keep getting wider. It's easy to get this message to people I know. So beyond the signs, it's not just about putting up signs and stickers. We saw the Racism Has No Home Here signs and they were fantastic, but that's where it ended. Hate Has No Home Here is a shared endeavor to try to bring people together to talk about their different views, to build and strengthen our bonds by reaching out to people we may not know as well as our friends and our close family, but who have also shown support for the Hate Has No Home Here campaign. And then have block parties, potlucks, media discussion events, get your garden club to host a plant trade. Anything that gets people together and talking and seeing each other. If you belong to an organization, talk to them about donating and receiving a bulk order of signs and then hosting a pop-up distribution event. The original group said distributing the signs really brought them together. I'm sorry. The more that we have relationships with each other, the less likely it is that we will have these fearful problems that we're also afraid of. And we only need to agree to have respectful discourse. So I just wanted to play real quick what I'm talking about. If it's not gonna let me, is it? It was John McCain. He's a good guy. Thank you. Sorry, I went over my time.
At this time, to the comment section of the meeting. And this is a 3-minute per person presentation where you can, residents and taxpayers of the community can speak on matters of concern regarding the district, on official actions the board has taken or is about to take, on matters of deliberation before the board. It's a 3-minute unpaused time frame. So let us know who you are and your address, and then please speak to us.
Hi, my name is Karen DeSalvo. I'm an attorney, and I have a son that just graduated from Montoursville Area High School. And the first thing I wanted to do was just comment to something that Michael Kraft said. He had a beautiful presentation, but not everything that he said was accurate. One of the things that he said was that critical race theory is not taught anywhere but in a few law schools. That is absolutely incorrect, and I'd like to draw the board's attention to a vote that was just taken by the largest teachers union in the United States, the NEA. They voted to approve a plan teaching critical race theory through K through 12. They want to include it in the K through 12 curriculum. Their plan is to promote it in all 50 states, in 14,000 local school districts, and their plan includes funding to attack opponents of CRT. I'm going to shorten it since I only have 3 minutes, including parent organizations and conservative research centers. So the premise that it's only taught in a few law schools is incorrect. What Michael Kraft was correct about, however, was that it actually did begin in law schools. So borrowing from Italian Marxist philosopher Antonio Gramsci, a group of Ivy League law professors developed a school of thought called critical legal studies. The main tenets of this philosophy included that justice is nothing but a political tool and the system only protects the wealthy and the privileged. What was the solution? To overthrow society. This is the backdrop for CRT. CRT includes teachings that our nation's civic structures are inherently oppressive, biased, and racist. If this agenda wins out, historical structures will be destroyed, which we've already seen, historic memories forgotten. July 4th has already been placed on the purge list by some radicals as, quote, an event not worth celebrating. CRT is actually a radical political agenda hiding under the guise of objective inquiry in search of a just society. It is rooted in Marxist ideology. Its primary purpose is not truth-seeking, but to undermine political legitimacy. No public money, no taxpayer dollars should be used to indoctrinate our children to hate America. This ideology is the opposite of what America stands for. There is so much division in this country today. How does teaching our children to hate our country unite? How does pitting our people as oppressors or the oppressed unify? How does painting an entire segment of our society as victims advance America in any way? I want to conclude with reading a passage from a book. I have purchased a copy of this book for every member of the board. It's called American Marxism by a New York Times best-selling author, Mark Levin. Last thing I want to do is just read you one paragraph and then I'll sit down. In America, many Marxists cloak themselves in phrases like progressives, democratic socialists, social activists, community activists, etc., as most Americans remain openly hostile to the name Marxism. They operate under myriad newly minted organizational or identifying nomenclatures such as Black Lives Matter, Antifa, the Squad, and they claim to promote economic justice, environmental justice, racial equity, gender equity. They have invented new theories like critical race theory and phrases and terminology linked to or fit into a Marxist construct. Of course, the purpose is to tear down and tear apart the nation for 1,000 reasons and in 1,000 ways. Thank you.
How are you? That's why they make otter boxes. My name is Catherine Burns, Fairfield Township, 219 White Church Road. I support the resolution. I want to make that clear. American schools have stopped teaching civics. Our children are no longer given the knowledge of history or principles or the foundation of American democracy. They are being deprived of what we learned when we were kids. It's no longer being taught. not personally saying you, but the education system has canceled God. They've canceled him. He's kicked out of the schools and replaced him with Satan. That's what's serving this. CRT is racism on steroids. I think it exceeds the KKK principles. I would like to say, Mr. Kraft, the vehicles that you are working on, and I admire you for your presentation, but those very vehicles are being used by our military. They are men and women that when they're going together in combat, one does not look at the other and say, can you be more black or could you be less white? They're fighting together. They're losing limbs, life, and families for America. An America that you live and serve. And I believe I would like to thank the military for fighting them. And I wonder what you call a harmful agenda. Is a harmful agenda bringing God back into the schools? Is it teaching history to our children? Is it teaching all of our children that we are all equal and we bleed red? I don't care what color our skin is. I can't be less white standing up here. And I certainly wouldn't ask members of my family to be more black. I've got them both, okay? I support the resolution. Regarding Sarah, the organization that you're promoting, it looks pretty on paper, and I'm not sure where you're at, but you're a beautiful girl. But I also have concerns about that organization being introduced into this school based on religious beliefs that she has. She is a self-declared witch, and that statement was made to me by her. So I have questions, and I would really like some vetting to be done of the leadership of that organization. Thank you.
I'm Paul Rinker, living on 2 Chestnut Street in the borough. You know, I had a nice little speech I was going to give you guys, and I think you liked it, but this morning changed all that when I got the paper. Yes, I'm old enough, I still get the paper. And the headline, what is and isn't critical race theory? 1,500 words from one source, a professor of history at Lycoming College. Critical race theory is history. It purports to be philosophy, but it isn't even really that. So if you want to know about philosophy, you go to a philosophy professor or a philosophy department, which is what I did. Actually, more than one. I looked up several, Stanford, Amherst, and a few others, and they have some interesting things to say about critical race theory. I mean, first off, critical race theory comes from critical theory. And critical theory comes from, and I quote this from Stanford, several generations of German philosophers and social theorists in the Western European Marxist tradition known as the Frankfurt School. Well, if you study communism, and I have since my sophomore year in high school, written several papers on it, you'll know that the Frankfurt School is a bunch of communists. They created this theory that they call it a theory. It's not a theory, it's a tactic. Its purpose is to find groups of people in the country who want to take over, call one an oppressor, one the oppressed, turn them against each other, get them to hate each other and fight each other so that you can come in and take over unopposed. That is what critical race theory is. It is just using critical theory to pit races against each other, which is the absolute opposite of what we want. In the teaching of critical race theory, and they are teaching it, no matter what anybody says, because you can find it anywhere. Coca-Cola, they're teaching it to their employees. They want them to be less white. Here's what it means to be less white. To be less oppressive, be less arrogant, be less certain, be less defensive, be less ignorant, be more humble, listen, believe, break with apathy, and break with white solidarity. So what does that say about white people? It says white people are oppressive, they're arrogant, they're very certain of themselves, they're defensive. I'm not sure if certain and defensive go together, but they're ignorant, they're not humble, they don't listen, they don't believe. I'm not sure what it is we're supposed to believe, but they're apathetic, and they just stick together. Now notice you're all white. Does that describe you? If it does, maybe you shouldn't be up there. I'm believing that it doesn't. Even though I disagree with many of you on a lot of things, I don't believe any of that about you. And I certainly don't believe that about every white person in here, or every white person in this district. And I don't think we should teach our children that. That is racism. That is what the KKK teaches. They teach that you are defined by your color. And that is the same thing that critical race theory teaches. Now, if Mr. Kraft is right, and it's not taught anywhere, then what's the harm of a resolution? Saying don't teach it. Who cares? But I don't think a resolution is enough. Because as it was already stated, there are many teachers who will teach it anyway. You need a policy forbidding it with teeth. It's saying anyone who teaches division, racial, sexual, any kind of division, will be terminated. You can work on that if you want. It doesn't have to be terminated, but there needs to be something. It's funny that the pastor came up here and he prayed for unity. That's what we want. We want unity. We don't want this division. I don't want this division. I don't want to talk to our kids. I don't want it forced on anybody. Now, I know we have racists in the country. And some of them are in public office. And we need to try to fix that. But teaching our kids to hate each other isn't the way to do it. Thank you.
Zachary Smith, 1221 Rose Valley Road. I would just like to point out that our school is teaching civics and government. It is a class that we take freshman year. I personally had to take it. So CRT is a legal academic concept from the 70s and 80s, and it started at a post-university level and is now trying to get into grade school. It is teaching that the oppressed or the oppressing are racist to the core, and it's not just teaching for example, George Floyd, the riot from the police standpoint, from the rioters' standpoint, whichever way you want to take it. It's not just teaching slavery, civil war, Jim Crow, civil rights, the Civil Rights Act, and then today it is teaching everything from the beginning of whenever slavery started happening until today. It's not just teaching the four main points. There are pretty aggressive tactics that are being used at local levels where everyone knows everyone, and it gets really personal really quick. I've noticed that here for the past 7-8 meetings that I've been here. One of the examples was Cumberland, Maine, with a population of about 7,211, kind of like Montoursville, 4,458, 3,000 person difference, but it got personal really quick to the point that they had to suspend the meeting and bring it out and start making it on Zoom because it got to a point of security reasons. There was one case a little while back, about 2 months ago, that got a lot of coverage. A woman in Rhode Island filed a little bit more than 200 record requests for not things like, what is your school teaching about American history or divisive race, but 10 years of emails with a person on the administration of harassment complaints from 7th grade all the way up until senior year of high school. And their child was just entering kindergarten. The school board said that 300 plus hours would be taken, and it would cost the requester about $10,000 to fulfill, because every school district has a right, to an extent, to charge for their time processing records requests. And small school districts like the one that did this said they would have to reassign people to do this. Something that would be coming from this would be a Tea Party-like wave. Steve Bannon, I think I'm reading my writing correctly, compared this to a Tea Party 2.0. He said, the path to save the nation is simple. It's going through the school boards. I've noticed that twice, and I think it's clear that it's true. It's happened twice, and both times I have accidentally missed those meetings. And I've gone back, and I've gotten multiple people's sides of it, and it did get personal. So I'd like to ask you to take a stand. I don't really care which side you take. I don't know much about critical race theory. I will admit that. It's something that I did in the last 15 minutes. And yeah, in the words of Alexander Hamilton, those who stand for nothing fall for anything. I think that's very clear. Thank you.
Kimberly Wren, 1105 Nicely Avenue. I don't have a prepared speech. Trying to keep with what the purpose here is, and that's to speak to the resolution. I don't think we should make a resolution against teaching critical race theory. I have 2 children who have graduated from this high school. I have one that will be starting her freshman year in a couple weeks. I want her to have the education her older brothers had. I was happy with it. They took civics, they took AP civics, that actually kicked my one son's butt. He said it's one of the hardest classes he's ever taken. And it helped prepare him for college and the world that he was entering. My boys in college see racism daily in their universities because this environment that they were raised in, they didn't get exposed to that. They didn't see their friends go through that here. We don't have it that I've seen. I work in Williamsport, but I live in Montoursville, so I see it at work. I have coworkers who wear hijabs. I have had to field phone calls from angry customers who have said, how can you employ those people? These kids need to grow with an understanding of the world that we are preparing them for. I'd rather them prepared through a book, through a lesson, through a conversation, than through an act of violence, physical or otherwise, at a university or at a future job. Please just let our teachers teach. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Carol Johnson, 148 Hampton Way, Montoursville. I did send some articles to you all late today. Maybe you didn't get them, maybe you did. So I decided to come tonight. It's a little late getting information to you, but there you have it. So I want to say that most wholeheartedly I agree with the proposed district resolution, with all its which eliminates all the aspects of CRT and every aspect of it, including the 1619 project and all of that. The purpose of education, as stated even in your policy, is to provide programs which emphasize academic standards, the teaching and instructing of U.S. factual history, the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the STEM programs, science, technology, engineering, and math. And even though, as we said, when Kathy said civics wasn't being taught, it might be here, but in a lot of places, it isn't in the standard form that we learned. I emphasize that academics in the program, not a lot of social cultural aspects should be taught. Those life lessons should be learned at home. However, I do agree that the school can become a social cultural environment. But to me, teachers and staff should try to stay neutral in all that and help the student as much as they can with those aspects of life. As you've already heard, critical race theory is an ideology which maintains that the United States is a fundamental racist country and that the American institutions such as the Constitution, property rights, color blindness, and equal protection under the law are vestiges of white supremacy, patriarchy, and capitalist suppression, all of which must be overthrown in the name of anti-racism. Ultimately, critical race theory and anti-racism policies would deepen racial divisions and undermine the very institutions that are essential to addressing poverty and inequality across all racial groups. Policymakers concerned with these issues should reject critical race theory and orient public policy toward rebuilding and, most importantly, the institutions of family, work, and education, which have proven to lift Americans of all backgrounds out of poverty. There are some scholars, as Haskins, Rector, Sawhill, and others, they've demonstrated the real drivers of American poverty of all racial groups are the so-called background variables of family structure, education attainment, and workforce participation. I think personally that if the government and education would have worked more toward helping minorities get a better education, that we wouldn't have this severe problem that we have now. In spite of the evidence demonstrating the importance of these variables, however, the critical race theorists have sought to undermine them at every turn. Some of this I don't want to be repetitive, so I'm skipping over what's already been said. The importance of two-parent households, or at least some male supportive person in a family, is really important. Although there's not any quick or easy solution for this problem, the alternative proposed by critical race theory, in essence, the revolutionary overthrow of capitalism, tradition, and constitutionalism could even be worse. There is a man named Ibram Kendi who was pretty well known, wrote books, taking the opposite philosophy of CRT. But let me point out that now according to an article I read by Rufo, that popularity of his thesis is becoming less, important. It's being realized that this man, Kendi, although he claims to oppose capitalism, the life of racism cannot be separated from the life of capitalism, he says. In order to be truly an anti-racist, you also have to be truly capitalist. But Kendi, like fellow traveler Patrice Cullors of Black Lives Matter, is a prolific capitalist in his personal life and in hers. He charged Fairfax County Schools $20,000 an hour for a virtual presentation and has merchandised his entire line of ideas, releasing self-help products and even an anti-racist baby book. He has accepted millions from tech and pharmaceutical companies on behalf of his anti-racism center. Fighting against capitalism, as it turns out, is a lucrative enterprise for such people as Kendi and Cullors, who has, if you don't already know, $4 million homes, and I don't even know how she helps the Black Americans and the other minority groups. I haven't seen that in any kind of positive sphere. I turned off. Okay. Let me finish up. The microphone went off. Can you hear? You can't hear me. Can you hear me now? I'll talk loud.
I've given a long latitude to folks tonight. So how about wrap it up quickly?
Yeah. Finally, my own opinion is that I do agree with the resolution. Oh, yeah, sure. I just want to add to this. I can't imagine a family with parents of, say, a black and white child who now, as little kids, have to be taught that whiteness is bad, that you're so white and you need to apologize, along with teenagers and college-age kids. I just can't imagine the confused minds that they will have over all of this. And I think I'll end it there. That's all. Thank you for your time.
Cindy Rensler, 90 Quaker State Road. I'll use my teacher voice for you. I'm head of the English department at the high school and will be entering my 29th year of being an English teacher for the district here. I do have several concerns about the critical race theory resolution before you today. One is the ambiguity of the definition. It seems like this current resolution is a one-sided definition, and we see that there are multiple sides to this issue. So I would encourage some thought about that maybe we need something, because of the ambiguity, that maybe this is something that's problematic. Also, the board already has policies to prevent discrimination against students based on race, gender, religion, ethnicity, and so on. So as teachers, we are already prohibited from villainizing the students because they are, for example, white or male or Christian. Second, banning discussion about CRT or potentially divisive issues directly conflicts with this current school board policy on current events. Finally, the proposed resolution opposes the use of instructional materials which makes generalizations or assumptions based on inherent advantage or disadvantages based upon sex, race, ethnicity, color, or national origin. If you pass this resolution, then most of the literature we teach at the high school level would be banned. I don't think our district can afford to buy us new textbooks to replace these. Furthermore, we wouldn't be able to find suitable text to abide by this resolution. Most works of literary merit explore settings in which one group oppresses another. Part of my job as a teacher is to guide students into understanding the author's purpose, a state standard that is tested in the Keystones, SATs, and also on the AP Lit exam. Just as an example, I've taught To Kill a Mockingbird back when I taught 7th and 8th grade and 9th grade for the last, like I said, almost 29 years here. As we read this story, should we not, as the students in the class, explore why the black church in the story cannot afford hymnals, and why the congregants couldn't read them if they had them anyway? It's set in the Jim Crow era if you're not familiar with the text. Should I not ask students to find Harper Lee's purpose in writing that the black character who was wrongfully convicted is shot not once, not twice, but 17 times? Why does Harper Lee include that? In the past 2 years, this has naturally led to class discussions about Black Lives Matter. As a professional, I know how to discuss a controversial topic without promoting it. And all students are free to give their opinions and maturely deal with any peer criticism of their opinions. This is part of becoming good citizens and showing respect to others. Are you saying that this should be banned? Am I indoctrinating students into feeling white guilt by asking these questions about To Kill a Mockingbird? Ask your own children. I have taught many of your own children and grandchildren. How will they respond? Have they felt indoctrinated? We read these stories to examine their literary elements, but also to develop students' empathy and knowledge of the world and its history. I believe a lot of this fear of indoctrination has arisen because this generation of students does not have exactly the same set of values as their parents and grandparents. And for that, I am thrilled. I grew up in Montoursville. I do not have classmates who were people of color or who are openly part of the LGBT community. I can only imagine the ignorant hostility they would have received. This generation does think differently for the most part. They are the most empathetic generation to date. This is not a time to narrow our way of thinking and our way of instructing to a misguided, irrational fear. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about the numerous texts in our curriculum that would be adversely affected by this resolution. Thank you.
Hello. Oh, this podium is so much better. It's not as tall as the other. So, this never gets any easier every week. Every time I come here, it actually might get harder. I did want to just touch on real quickly this group, this Moms for Liberty group that was mentioned, because a lot of these groups get characterized as these extreme groups. So if you'd like to classify me as extreme, which I never have been, I reached out to Moms for Liberty earlier this spring because we were having the issue with the health department and trying to get masks off our kids, and I needed some resources. So I reached out and found this national group of other moms that I related to, and interestingly enough, there's a group of us here that it's a nonpartisan group that met to develop what ended up being an adopted health and safety plan that we had last time. The primary function of that group is to hold leaders accountable, to spread awareness, to oppose government overreach, to promote liberty and engage on key issues, and activate public service. So all these things have nothing to do with politics, really. These are moms. We haven't been in the school buildings. Maybe we haven't been knowing what's been going on. And now that we have some awareness and some resources, we're bringing up the discussion. And I'm very proud that our district is in this position where we are all here meeting in person, talking about these issues that are divisive, and trying to conclude some way to move forward together. I think part of what it is for me, I didn't know that if I wasn't anti-racist, I was a racist. I was unfamiliar that my kids at elementary school age would ask me what gender racism is. So part of this for me is just provoking conversation. That's not meant to make anyone feel any negative feelings. It's just that we'd like to get ahead of things. Instead of being reactive, we're being proactive. We're having dialogue, and I'm very appreciative of the fact that many of the school board members I've had personal conversations with, expressing my concerns with, and I feel heard. And I think everyone here feels heard, which is a great step. Part of what this is, though, for Moms for Liberty for me, is that we are awake, but we're not woke. And this term is, maybe I've been up in the hills of Pennsylvania too long, but a lot of this stuff is coming at me like, why am I talking about this in elementary school? So not that there's not a time and a place for all these big, big topics, but it seems like we're going down these paths that it's like literacy, mathematics, like there's some real things we know we can all agree on. So that's really all I have. I really wasn't even going to speak tonight, to be honest, because everyone's sort of covered everything I've had to say. But when you see something that you're affiliated with come up as like this extremist group, I've never considered myself an extremist, and I'd like to say that anybody that maybe has met me would realize that providing each other information and civil discourse is really how we are going to move forward, and I'm very appreciative of the time. Thank you.
Good evening. Joanne Rinker, 1102 Chestnut Street, Montoursville. And Everything I have to say has been said, except on the personal level. I don't think anybody's mentioned how many interracial junctions have been made, couples that we see now today that we didn't see 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And then I started thinking, I'm a byproduct of an interracial marriage. Do I look it?
Yeah.
No. But if I got into a critical race theory, I don't know what the answer was, but if I got into a critical race theory class, they would pretty much rip a quarter of me out. Or if my mother was in an CRT class, they would have ripped her in half. Okay? To give you the history, my grandparents met in the late 1920s in Greenwich Village. My grandmother, I think, was from New Jersey. My grandfather was American-born Japanese, born in Rhode Island. They met, they fell in love, they got married, they had 2 children. When World War II came around, he joined the army and went away. They had a chicken farm. And Grandma didn't handle it too well. Somehow the gas was on and the chickens died. So I want to say that my grandfather went, he fought, and came back to nothing. And during that time, there were things called internment camps. That is funny, I happened to be on the internet and saw that this is the anniversary of the Civil Liberty Acts of 1988, when they made reparations for the Japanese who had to go into those internment camps and lost everything. My grandfather didn't have to. So my grandfather lost everything fighting, okay? But my grandmother, this is what my grandmother's made out of. A couple of farmers in the community said, especially my mother and her sister, they should go to an internment camp. And my grandmother said, over my dead body, okay? So here's what you gotta think about, is do we really need it? Because things are blending. We have been a nation, a melting pot. And so, we can work on this. So we don't need to be indoctrinated. Our kids don't need to be indoctrinated with somebody else's theory that is a philosophy. It's not history. So then I went and remembered something, my heirloom from my grandparents, from my grandfather, I believe. These were his books. And they're great history books. They're entitled Hope of the Nation, Our American Heritage, and Hope of the Nation, Our Christian Heritage. And that was the thing. Their Christianity showed them love instead of hate. And their Christianity gave them the boldness to say, I'm getting married to the one I love. So I believe we should control what our kids are educated about. And eventually, like I said, I learned it, but I didn't learn it in elementary school. I think I heard about it in high school, and that's when I went to my mother and got inquisitive about racial things. And even that was supposed to intend to protect people, but it hurt them terribly. And I want to bring out 9/11, how they wanted to do the same thing to the Muslims. Did we let them? No. We learned from our mistakes. We're a great nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
I just wanted to take a minute to clear up any confusion. CRT is an issue in today. It's in our newspapers. It's everywhere. So I was even in Chicago just recently, and they were there was a group there. It was a bunch of teachers, and they were being told about equity and diversity and all the terms that fall under CRT. So I don't want us to pretend that, oh, it's just this thing taught in colleges. It's being pushed on our kids. I do want to make this clear. No one is telling you not to read To Kill a Mockingbird. Nobody wants that to stop. We want To Kill a Mockingbird, and we want good, healthy discussions, but we want parameters. We don't want this to be a CRT free-for-all. Also, no one is trying to stop civics class. If civics class has gone on at Montoursville and there's been, people that have come out of those classes and been better educated for it, that's great. No one wants to dislike people at the grocery store for wearing a hijab. That's not what this resolution is about either. So when people get up here and compare a resolution opposing CRT, which is Marxist and communist, to the other things, it's not a fair comparison. It makes voting on a resolution a bad thing when actually we just want to protect our kids from being indoctrinated. And that's a good thing. So we're asking you again to protect our kids and pass this resolution. And don't believe the other things that people are trying to push, that we want to stop civics, we want to stop To Kill a Mockingbird, and we want to hate people. Because we are Christians and we do love people. And I love to hear that pastor pray that we want unity. We want unity more than ever, and that's why we want this resolution. Because the people that want CRT in our district are trying to they're trying to push, whether they know it or not, they're trying to push an agenda that is very divisive and politically motivated. And we don't want that here. And I do have kids in this district, and I want them protected, and I want you to choose to do it. Thank you.
Kimberly Ryan, 1105 Nicely Avenue. Yeah. Brenda went to, oh, that was her earlier thing. Do I have to wait? Should I wait?
If there's anyone else who wishes to speak, and then you can speak now.
Anybody else want to go? Cool.
Mark Oberheim, 192 Woodland Court. Just real quickly, I just think in the simple terms, like, we want to teach kids about racism. The most humble person you ever met. Think of the most humble person you ever met. Did they ever talk about humility? Did they ever take a class in humility? I doubt it. When my kids come home from somewhere, they just came home from a week-long wrestling camp in Iowa about a month ago. The guy that they're around most all week long, they talked about his laughter, his jokes, what he liked to eat. They didn't mention that he was black. I looked up his picture because they told me his name. We don't have to teach our kids not to hate. We just have to let them be. When we put these ideas in their mind about this one's bad, this one's oppressed, it serves no purpose. Thank you.
Mine will be brief. My name's Orrin Thomas. I live in Montoursville. I have grandchildren that attended Montoursville school here. And I'd like to, I had something I was going to read, but I'm just going to simply say I believe that the CRT is an indoctrination. But what I want to point out, because I'm an old timer, in my lifetime I went to 14 different schools in 12 years, but they all had something in common. And the one thing that it was, first of all, we were patriotic. And we said that before we started this meeting, we made a pledge to allegiance to the flag, okay? And I appreciated that. But do we do that? I'm just asking you folks, do you do it in the classrooms today?
Yes.
Do you? Okay, I'm glad. There's something else we did when I went to school, to all 14 of these different schools. We said the Lord's Prayer. I don't know, do we ask the Lord's Prayer anymore in school, or do we take God completely out of it? And the other thing I wanted to point out, I just think this is something too. I graduated in 1967 at Sugar Valley Area High School, and a lot of farmers out there. But not only did they do the Pledge of Allegiance or the flag, not only did we say the Lord's Prayer, but they even read the Bible. And I can't get over, I don't know where I am anymore in this United States of America. I love this country, and we just see this going south over and over again. You know, we were taught in school, we were taught history, and we were taught about the Civil War, and we were taught that, you know, that was terrible, the Civil War, where it was brother against brother, father against son, son against father. They shed their blood for the freedom. I mean, slavery was abolished. We have been working as a country, taking care of things. This CRT and all this garbage, I mean, I can't, you go to a game, a basketball game, or a football game, or a baseball game, and people kneeling, even on the Olympics, that, you know, if these people don't like it, why don't they go to another country? I don't get it. All I know is I'm old, and I really fear for my children's children and my children's children's children. I don't know where we're headed in this country, but it sure doesn't seem like it's the right direction.
Hi, Dan Asello, 999 Weldon Street. If I were an outsider coming in tonight to watch this school board meeting, I would think that a lot of our kids didn't like each other. That's my take. And it seems like a very broad spectrum to be looking down at. And then I bring myself to my kids at home, my two girls at good Montoursville. When I ask them how their day is and what they learned, I've never heard them once say, yeah, I was taught to hate Jimmy today because of X, Y, Z. I've never heard hate being taught or one person not to like the other. And I compliment Montoursville for that. I mean, you do teach unity. And in order to have unity, you need to have understanding. And what does it take to understand? Is to listen to each other. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'll be brief. I wanted to comment on the label that was placed on me. I don't practice any organized religion or anything like that, but we do have freedom of religion in this country and freedom from religion. So I don't think that we should be worrying about anyone's personal practices at home. And I don't think that anything that I've spoke about or that's being represented is worthy of being sneered at the way that it was when people were walking in. A heart and an American flag, liberty and justice are not scary. Montoursville has the lowest population of Black people in the entire county because we are a restricted covenant community. I know personally about kids who were bullied out of school. Well, since I went here, up until this year, it is a problem. We should talk about it. No one should be indoctrinated. We should just talk. If anyone would like to hear about anti-racism, I will make myself available after this meeting to explain the tenets. But again, I'm not asking you to enact any new policies. I'm not sending my kid to school this year. And I don't teach my kid what to think. I teach my kid to think. Please do that for every student here.
Kimberly Wren, 1105 Nicely Avenue. I was about to get off topic, so I want to apologize. Religion in the schools is a hot button issue for me. Not everyone that attends this school district, this public school district, is a Christian. And we have to remember that. Freedom of religion and from religion, like she said. I am a Christian. Not everyone that goes here is. I sat several years ago at, I think it was an honor society induction, breakfast, brunch, something. and a family next to me had never heard of the baccalaureate, and they didn't know what it was. This was something I didn't grow up with. When I first came here, I didn't know what it was. I explained it to them. They were offended because they felt like their senior, who was not a Christian, was going to be excluded from that. I'm not saying it's something we shouldn't do. I absolutely love it. It's a beautiful ceremony. I'm just saying that we have to be sensitive in all areas of how different we all are and how we all can get along through those differences. Thank you.
Okay, this time then the board will move on with the agenda items. And thank you for the comments. Just thank you very much. This time then the business manager would like to have your report.
We've received copies of the treasurer's report for the period ending July 31st, 2021.
And close.
You've received copies of the treasurer's report for the period ending July 31st, 2021 for the general fund and the cafeteria fund. We are submitting these to the board for your consideration of approval.
Move to approve.
Second.
Questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
There are no budgetary transfers. You've received copies of the listing of invoices for the general fund and the cafeteria fund for the period ending August 10th, 2021. We are submitting these to the board for your consideration of approval and payment.
Move to approve.
Second.
Questions, discussion? We have a roll call.
Mr. Eller?
Yes.
Dr. Berry?
Yes.
Mrs. Marriott?
Yes.
Dr. Mathers? Yes. Mr. Ruffing?
Yes.
Mr. Schimmel?
Yes.
Mr. Snow?
Yes.
Mr. Ulmer?
Yes.
Okay, and just some things going on in the business office right now. The auditors were in for their preliminary audit work last week. They'll be back in September, early October to finish up the audit work once we have received invoicing and feel that we have finished out the year. Yesterday, we did receive notice from Pennsylvania Department of Food Service and that the Food Service Department will be going through a procurement review this fall. So we will have that going on also. And that is all I have this evening.
Thank you. Superintendent.
This evening, I would like to discuss something that I have shared with the board previously, and that is the lack of substitute teachers that we currently have, as well as the national shortage of teachers who are becoming certificated individuals to be in a classroom. Last year, we had 342 times where classes were not covered due to not being able to find enough substitutes. And we pull substitutes from many different types of resources. Those resources extend to IU guest teachers, they extend to retired professionals. We have individuals who come in on a day-to-day basis, and we also have a pool of individuals called exclusive subs. And the exclusive sub is someone who has come to our district and we have employed them for at least 170, they can go up to 170 days of employment with us. If they work 160 days, 80 in the first semester, 80 in the second semester, we provide a bonus for them. Currently, that bonus is $25, and the exclusive subs, because they are exclusively for Montoursville, is $100. Substitutes normally come in for the first 30 days at $90, and then after that move to $100. In finding that we are so short on substitutes, we are looking to offer our retirees, Montoursville retired teachers, we are looking to offer them a higher stipend, and we are also looking to offer our exclusive subs the bronze level federal benefits for the single person. And we would like to discuss this and have the board share what their feelings are about that proposal with us this evening so that we can get something on a future agenda to ensure that we can try to have more individuals covering our students in the classroom.
What would, say the pay again that they are paid currently and what you want it to go to?
Currently, our retirees are at the $90 and $100, just like a day-to-day sub would be. We would like to increase that to at least $135, so that a retiree, let me clarify, a retiree would be $135. We would also like to have the board consider raising the rate of a daily sub, as well as offering bronze level benefits for exclusive subs to our district.
What was the amount that you would like to bring to?
$135 for a retiree, yes. And then we would like to discuss something for a day-to-day sub where it could be segmented the way that it is. You start them out maybe at the $90 or $100, and you might move them to a $110 increase if they have more than the 30 days given to our district. And then the exclusive subs, if they provide us with 80 days per semester, they are normally making $100 a day, but if they reach that goal for us and have been consistent with us, we then give them $25 extra a day. We'd like to maintain that, however, give them exclusive subs, give the exclusive subs the benefits that they would need in healthcare. Those benefits are $591 per month. They would be offered those benefits from September through June.
Thank you.
And you said that's for the single only coverage, so it would just be the individual?
It would just be for the individual. If the individual would like to purchase for children, for spouse, for family, they have an opportunity to do that then.
On the days that you left short, how do you feel about it? What do you do?
We do a lot of things. We have teachers who are using their prep periods who should not be. It's in their contract that they get a prep period. We have administrators who are running gym classes and math classes and all kinds of other things. And we try to get by helping one another.
Aren't we comparable to other districts currently?
In what factor? Cost, you mean?
Yes.
We don't know how we compare at this particular moment. I know that there are some districts who do have a better rate for pay than we do. I can't verify what that is specifically, but I know when Mrs. Smith and I have spoken, there have been districts who are higher than us.
And are there other districts that are offering health insurance for substitute teachers?
I cannot answer that. I do not know.
And if there's a shortage of substitute teachers in every district, how would raising the pay and giving them health insurance improve this problem?
We hope that it improves the problem so that those who are interested enjoy working in our district versus working maybe in other districts. Perhaps they live in our district and would rather be in our district than travel to other districts. It's a big county.
And you view this as a short-term solution?
I do not view it, Mr. Elmer, as a short-term solution at this point when the state is saying that they have 71% less certificates being awarded each year.
and I say short-term, I'm thinking, 3 or 4 years. But at some point, if the availability of teaching, potential teachers improves, then this is something that we could, it's not a negotiated item, this is an administration item. So it's something that can be approved year to year. I anticipate, I guess, improve, bringing this up each year for approval.
And we absolutely would want for approval for this every year, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Christina, when was the last time that we increased pay? And by how much?
I'm sorry, I can't. Folks, I cannot hear. I have my hearing aid in, but the acoustics in here is terrible. I'm sorry. I'm making an assumption that Christina is talking about what she shared in the board updates, of which I am wholeheartedly in favor of. So I'm probably going to vote yes, but folks, I'm not really certain what I'm going to be voting on. Am I upset? Absolutely.
That is what we were speaking to, Mr. Ulmer. You are correct.
Thank you.
You are right. I believe that we raised rates possibly 4 or 5 years ago, and I wanted to say it was $10 or $15. Oh, right, since it was $5. We went from $85 to $90 is what this is.
5 years ago, approximately?
Yes.
Longer
She
than
thinks
that.
it was longer than that.
And how many hours are, I assume it's at least 8 hours or?
It could be for a half of the day, or it could also be for a full day, which is 7 hours and 32 minutes.
Maybe somebody could check the speaker over here so Mr. Ulmer can hear, because this speaker is not working. It was working earlier.
All I'm hearing is feedback.
Yeah. There's a bad roar. It's difficult for us to understand also.
I can almost hear you, Pat.
It's difficult for us to hear too. And I've got mine in, Dale.
I am not asking for a vote this evening. What I am asking for is the consideration so that if you bring it to the board, we can vote on it.
Excellent.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mr. Mason,
I heard that.
our situation is no different than private industry. That's what everybody has to do. And the teacher shortage, I'm quite well aware, is dire. So if we have to do what private industry has to do and pay more to attract more, then that we need to get a very serious consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
If there's no more discussion on that item, then we can move into the agenda. Superintendent, will you walk us through the agenda?
Sure. Under General, G1, motion to approve a resolution for the Montoursville Area School District to oppose public school and publicly funded charter school for materials promoting critical race theory or advocating similar divisive concepts relating to sex, race, ethnicity, color, or national origin.
Move to approve.
I'm hearing the second, motion dies.
Oh, good Lord. No,
Well, we can discuss it later on in the meeting. Let's get through the agenda, and at the end of the meeting, we can all weigh in on our thoughts on it. But let's get the agenda taken care of. We need to finish our business first. Yes.
G2, approval of an agreement between Montoursville Area School District and Lycoming Clinton Joiner Board for Student Assistance Program Services for the 21-22 school year.
Motion to approve. Second.
Questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
G3, approval of the 21-22 Montoursville Area School District Faculty Handbooks.
Motion to approve. Second.
Questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
G4, approval of the 21-22 Montoursville Area School District Handbooks.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
G5, approval of the 21-22 Montoursville Area School District Athletic Handbook.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
G6, approval of the substitutes for the following lists for 21-22 as listed for the professions.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion, questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
G7, approval of a use of facilities request from Greg Fisher, Montoursville Area High School Band Boosters, Montoursville Area High School for December the 4th, 2021, from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Question, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
G8, approval to allow Montoursville Little League to provide improvements to the Little League field at Liger Elementary School at no cost to the district.
Move to approve.
Second.
Question?
When is this work going to take place?
I don't believe that we have a time, you do have a time frame? Early September, Mr. Romer.
Are you going to be able to do work outside of the school hours?
Our goal is to see the infield. We will put up a temporary snow fence that will be 3 feet into the outfield. You go down to the field now, it's a serious drop off from the infield to the outfield. We want to level it, reseed the infield by putting that temporary snow fence up will allow new grass to grow. So all the infield will be leveled that.
And I understand that's not, but my question is when? You're going to have to use some heavy equipment?
No, not serious, not serious. No.
Because the noise with that, if it can be at all avoided
Yeah.
during school hours.
We don't plan to do things during school hours, absolutely not.
Okay,
Yes.
that's my question.
No,
Thank you.
We do not do things during school hours, absolutely.
Thank you.
This definitely includes the field, that we haven't had that kind of renovation for the field for 25 years.
Okay, any more questions on the list? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
G9, approval of a use of facilities request from Kenny Smith, Montoursville Youth Football and Cheers, Montoursville Area High School Football Field, including the food truck, August the 28th, September 12th, 19th, 18th, 26th, October 16th, 24th, from 10 till 2 p.m.
Motion to approve. Second.
Any questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
G10 is just an acknowledgement of the receipt of the audited schedules titled Project Accounting Based on Final Cost and Financial Report, cash basis for project number 304 of the Montoursville Area High School for the Montoursville Area School District for the period of May the 13th, 2015, through September the 26th, 2019. Acknowledgement, no motion is necessary. G11, approval of an agreement between Montoursville Area School District and Justice Works Youth Care for 21-22 school year.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
We have left G12 open for discussion and a motion, if necessary, on policy 006.
What happened to G10?
It was the agenda.
Thank you.
G10. G10, G10 was just an acknowledgement, no motion needed.
I have a question on G10.
Sure.
I'm curious how $2 million of grant revenue was missed getting recorded as noted in the letter from Larson Kellett and Associates after their audit.
I will respond to that, Bob. All right. So when we prepared for the PlanCon to submit it for the final approval, to get the final rate, first time I've ever reviewed it, ever seen it, and new accountant preparing it, and it didn't look like the way we read it that it was supposed to go on there. That's why it goes to an auditor before that, and once they explained it to us, we understood that it needed to go on there. So it was nothing of intentional, it was just not having the knowledge or previously doing it in the way that we read it. We didn't think it needed to be on there, but it is corrected for the final submission.
Okay, thank you. And the speaker quit again.
Thanks, Ron. By the way, when that speaker was working, I could hear fine.
Okay, we're on to G12. And after the last meeting, the direction was to incorporate the new legislation in policy 06, and I believe that is what we have is just an iteration of that new legislation. That's pretty much it. Everything else in that policy, I believe, stays the same. Is that correct, Cindy? Just the addition of that
Yes,
legislation?
it's just literally copy and paste it from the actual legislation.
Yeah, okay. So that's what we have before us. The legislation isn't effective till the end of August, but we can still enact it as our policy and it'd be effective immediately. I believe this is this first and second reading, though. Or we can make this first reading and you want to do second reading next month. I mean, what's your flavor on this?
I just like to make sure, get some clarification to make sure I'm understanding this right. The way I'm reading it, if a board member wants to add something to the agenda, and the majority of the board votes to add that to the agenda, then it will get added to the agenda and the public then gets a chance to speak on that agenda item, correct?
Meaning the agenda for that meeting or for the subsequent meeting?
For that meeting.
I think to be consistent with sunshine law, that would have to be that way. I think so, yes.
Okay, I just want.
That's how I read it.
And that's how I read it too, but I just wanted to make sure that I was understanding it correctly.
Well, you should explain that.
If we were able to add an agenda item through what the legislation, it's routed to add an agenda item, then because of sunshine law, because our past practice even, that item before we vote on would actually be public would have an opportunity to comment on that agenda item. We're in action.
But it takes away from the public knowing before we have a meeting that we're going to discuss it. Only the people at the meeting would know that we're going to discuss it.
True, but the legislation has that provision for the minimus things.
Well, that's not just the minimus, I don't think. I think Ron's referring to E, which is one of the questions I had, we need to be very careful not to use E as a go-around and vote on something without the public knowing about it well in advance.
The only thing that we can't add to the agenda on the night of the meeting is if it has to do with spending taxpayer funds. But if you look at under C2, the matter is de minimis in nature and does not involve the expenditure of funds or entering into a contract or agreement by the district. It is allowed.
It may be allowed,
And if it was brought, that's an and with number one though, so brought to the attention within 24 hours prior.
My concern is what E is saying. And E is saying that the board may add a matter of agency business to the agenda upon majority vote. The reasons for the changes to the agenda shall be announced at the meeting before any vote is conducted to make the changes to the agenda. The board subsequently takes official action on the matter added to the agenda. So to me, that is a go-around of this whole policy change, which is meant to increase transparency and have the public know what we are going to be discussing before the meeting occurs.
Correct. But Donna, you didn't read the whole thing. If you read the 2 sentences before what you read, it says, upon majority vote of the individuals present
I read that.
and voting during the conduct of a meeting, the board may add a matter of agency business to the agenda. The reasons for the changes to the agenda shall be announced at the meeting before any vote is conducted.
I read that, Ron.
Okay.
But it's a go-around. In my opinion, that's a go-around that I really don't want to see in policy, because that just takes us back to what happened with the vote in May.
Except don't G and E go together so that I guess I almost see E as following from D. May take official action to refer the matter to staff for researching, or if the matter is de minimis in nature and does not involve.
Well, the official action says in some, except as provided in B, C, D, or E. Doesn't say and E. It says or E. I think the change in the sunshine law is great. I think that really helps with transparency in the community knowing well ahead of time, or at least 24 hours, what we're going to be discussing, so they know if they have to change their schedule to come in and meet and say what they want to say. And if we do that go around in E, we just kind of default, in my opinion.
Was it copied correctly, I guess?
It was copied correctly. I don't know why the bill was written that way. But we don't have to accept that in its entirety in our policy if we don't want to.
Let's, since you do have questions, why don't we make this the first reading, and then we have work to do for the next meeting. So maybe you want to consider a committee meeting, perhaps, as available, or we should be ready next meeting to discuss it in more detail.
I just want to remind Dr. Mathers that you still have the option to table a motion. So
I understand that.
I believe the argument you brought up is kind of moot when you do have that option to table a motion. And that would also be voted on, just like it would be voted on to add something to the agenda.
Right, it almost seems like is this that Robert's Rule of Order where you can if a majority has to vote to add it. So I guess I think it's worth further discussion and clarification. But like you said, Ron, I wonder if that's the difference. That it was almost like my go around I did that night. If the majority vote to add it, then it can be added.
Dave, I'd like to make a motion to extend the meeting by half an hour.
About that time? I guess we're just discussing it, so you'll need a motion to extend the meeting by 30 minutes.
Motion to extend.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 30 minutes. So let's, I guess time's moving along a little bit. Shall we do a first reading on this? I mean, the law is going to be in effect in 20 days, and let's take this up again in September. What do you think?
Motion to approve first reading.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Ayes have it.
Under Personnel, P1, approval of the following resignation from a member of the support staff, Mr. Taylor Strine. Motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
P2, approval of the following unpaid leave of absence from a member of the staff who already used 10 unpaid days for 21-22. Motion to approve.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
P3, approval of the following leave of absence from a member of the professional staff.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Questions, discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
P4, approval of the following leave of absence from a member of the support staff.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
P5, approval of the following additions to the long-term positions as listed.
Move to approve.
Second.
Questions? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Ayes have it.
P6, approval of the following changes to the coaching staff for 21-22 school year as listed.
Motion to approve. Second.
Any questions? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Ayes have it.
P7, approval of the following support staff to move from one building to another effective for the 21-22 school year.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Questions? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Ayes have it.
I do not see a P8, but I do see a P9. Approval of the following additions to the support staff effective for the 21-22 school year as listed. Motion to approve.
Second.
Questions, discussion?
Are these new positions then?
No, they are not new positions, they are replacement positions.
Oh, okay.
Any questions? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Ayes have it.
Under Transportation, P1, approval of Promised Land busing rates in the amount of $2,343.52 for July of 2021. Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Superintendent, for walking us through that. Now we'll move on to other reports, and Madam Vice President, we can walk us through that.
Okay, PSBA, the only thing I have to report is they're continuing to work on a cyber school funding reform, which of course we all really need. But nothing else that just jumps out to me at this point. Policy committee,
I guess just the second reading or final reading of that new policy goes.
ID representative.
No July meeting, nothing to report.
LCTC.
We meet next week, but we did have a executive session last week to, well, in hopes of hiring a new executive director. The executive director has stepping down in September, and well, that candidate got away from us, so we're back to the drawing board.
Okay.
Dr. Meadows, can I maybe say one more thing about the policy committee? I'm sorry.
Sure.
Some minutes and I guess if it just reassures people about the CRT issue, as Dale brought to my attention or our attention, policy, policy 106 in the policy manual says that no planned instruction shall be taught in the district schools unless it has been adopted by a majority vote of the full board. So I guess I get that CRT makes people feel unsafe, but I guess if that reassures anyone that teaching of CRT would require an explicit motion to add CRT to the curriculum, and that is basically what policy 106 in our policy manual would require in order for it to be taught.
Mr. Conkle's not here from Memorial Gardens. Anybody hear something?
Dale, you had something on Memorial Gardens? Scott's not here.
I wasn't sure if Scott is now. The Rental Care Committee did receive a $10,000 gift from an anonymous source.
I announced that a couple of minutes ago. We do have some other funding coming through, and we are actually meeting tomorrow at 4 o'clock to work on some stuff in Memorial Garden. So hopefully we'll be getting refresh over in Memorial Garden here shortly, and we do have some really generous donors coming forward. So we'll be coming forward at future meetings.
That's awesome. Thank you. Mr. Homer, you have anything on budget?
Nothing to add at this time?
Mr. Albert, Building and Grounds?
Yeah. Is this one working? I am. Oh, there it goes. Other than we just need to check on the audio here. It might have a little rust. But, okay.
Okay, we'll take care of that, right? Montoursville Foundation, Mr. Ulmer?
Nothing to report this time.
And anything with extracurricular, Mr. Conkle's not here then?
Correct.
Okay, that's it.
Okay, the agenda items, we'll move on to item 9, and that is public comment.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Before we get to public comment, I'd like to say something. I also did a lot of research on CRT, and I'd like to read a statement, and I can't take credit for this. I give credit to the Cuban Owens. This is a statement by Mr. Owens, and for me, it really hit home because I truly believe this statement is a factual statement. CRT is divisive. It fosters racial hatred by trafficking in racial stereotypes, collective guilt, racial segregation, and race-based harassment. It rejects Martin Luther King's hope that we should be judged not by the color of our skin, but by the content of our character. I truly believe those words spoken by this man. Thank you.
And actually, before we do start public comment section, that motion died, and there's a reason many of us felt that couldn't be on board for it. So I think if any board members wish to speak to why they weren't in favor of a second, is that? No, I think the public deserves, communication was one of the words out there, they wanted to hear from us, and I think they need to hear from us. And I'll go first, frankly. Kyle Taylor, we're in the same page, Kyle Taylor. Is he still here? You know what, I'd like to get with you sometime and chat. I know we're on the same page. I like the great one. This guy's good. But look, this isn't happening in Montoursville School District, and I have full confidence in our administration and our staff that they're not going to do this to our students. That they're going to teach our kids to think critically, think for themselves, and they do that. I have a grandson just graduated, and I pity the teacher that tried to argue with him anyway, but this kid thinks for himself. My daughter graduated 5 years ago, and she said how much she appreciated. She knew that the civics teacher, and he probably was a Democrat, that's okay. But he was so fair in how he let the kids express their own thoughts, their own thinking, and process information, process what they were learning. See, I have no fears that it's going on in Montoursville. I have confidence in our staff, confidence in the administration, that they're going to teach our kids how to think critically for themselves. Now, there might be something pop up here and there, and you can't avoid that. But as a whole, I don't think it is needed. The old saying, if it's not broke, don't fix it, I think this applies. And I frankly don't want to insult our staff and administration by telling them we need this, because we don't need this. What's down the road 10 years? I don't know. Who does know? But at this point in time, that's why I don't think it's necessary. And as far as the CRT goes, there is that extreme element of it. It's like a chameleon, It depends on who's talking. That's what it is, But the history of it, I watched the people that I think are credible and believable, and it's got bad history to it. So I agree 100%. But we don't need to go down that path with a resolution at this point in my mind. Maybe someday, not today.
Mr. Schimmel.
Let's look at our members express. We can come back around to you. Go ahead. Anybody else?
Mr. Schimmel, I would like to. I answered some emails from people. I made it explicitly clear that I was against any movement, ideology, group of people that attempted. And if any of you got my responses, it clearly said I was against anything that promoted the further division of the American people on the basis of the color of their skin. I have friends of all colors and nationalities. Always have, always will. I never saw an issue with more gray area than CRT. As you know, I'm totally against it. But it's such a gray area. If I went around the room and asked each one of you, I gave you 5 different incidents in Black American history, and I asked you, is that CRT or not CRT? I would get different answers from every person. So now, we received an email from a female faculty member in our high school. Well, she spoke tonight, it's no secret, Mrs. Webster. Her questions were, okay, so what can we teach, what can't we teach? What books can we use, what books can't we use? What happens if the teacher teaches the wrong thing? Who disciplines them? What is discipline? What is CRT? What's not? I never saw anything so convoluted, so confusing, it's just left up to each person what they think. Like Mr. Schimmel said, I didn't second the motion. I see no need for it. I thoroughly stand against those kinds of teachings. Dr. Beery made it clear that we wouldn't be able to introduce that without a majority vote of the board. At our last meeting, Mr. Kraft spoke, and one of the things he said was, and it was the best thing that was said all night, and Mr. Kraft said, how about we not worry about what's going on in national politics and around the United States, and why don't we just focus on what affects the Montoursville area school district? Let's just take care of things at home. That's all I want to do. I want to take care of things right here in the Montoursville area school district. I don't care what's going on in other states, other big cities. I'm not interested. I don't want it coming into here. All we want to do is take care of business locally. And again, this would have opened such a can of worms as to what we could do, what we couldn't do. It would have been terrible. I sent an email out to my fellow board members after our last meeting the next day. I wasn't criticizing Ron. I think Ron had great intention. He wanted to get out in front of it. But I said, we just opened up a can of worms. The people who promote this stuff, the first thing that they need to have is exposure. They want to get it into the conversation. And that's exactly what that resolution did. Look, tonight. We spent over an hour talking about it. Those people that promote this garbage, they would be pleased. Because now it became a big issue here tonight. It dominated our meeting. It didn't have to be. I would just like to see it go away and never be spoken about again. Thank you.
I'd like to expand on what Mr. Cameron, what Mr. Ruffalo said. It's a little bit bizarre that Mrs. Overheim and Mr. Kraft both kind of independently mentioned the idea of curriculum transparency and a curriculum director position. And my position, the curriculum director was eliminated or not replaced before my time on the board. But my position is reinstating a curriculum director position will provide the safety that parents desire, the curriculum transparency, and help the teachers feel safe by potentially, so, you know, we got our cost savings out, we got 5 years of no curriculum director or whatever it was, and I really give props to our teacher teams that chose the reading curriculum, so I thought the teacher teams worked well. But these sensitive issues are so big and so sensitive. I'll let us get back to school, but I'm going to reintroduce the idea that a curriculum director position is a better, longer-term solution to addressing both parents who feel nervous about these things and answering teacher questions about what can I teach and what can't I teach. That the bottom-up worked with the curriculum, picking the phonics and the reading. But I think with these issues, it's not going to go away. We need a top-down, universal district guidance on curriculum issues. Kind of, I guess, to mirror what Bill said then, the resolution got longer after the original meeting. So the resolution was expanded. And I don't have a problem with the sentence, you know, the board opposes curriculum, instruction, or materials promoting critical race theory. I think kind of a lot of us are saying that's a no-brainer in terms of supporting that. But the second sentence, the board opposes similar divisive concepts relating to sex, race, ethnicity, color, or national origin. As written, that's just too vague. That can be interpreted to mean you can't teach the Constitution. I printed out the civics and government and history standards, and I counted 20 standards that if the resolution as written passed, we would be prohibited from teaching those standards. And especially when we talk about disciplining teachers and terminating them, we can't have that vague language of that second sentence about divisive concepts relating. We need to operationalize that Because again, it could be interpreted to mean that 20 different PA and Keystone standards could not be taught to our students. So those were my two concerns with this. And obviously not teaching 20 PA standards is not in our children or our district or our teachers' best interests. So I'm happy to talk to people, but those are the things I couldn't wrap my head around.
And that was a similar concern that I had. It was just the resolution was too broad, ambiguous, and asked for any diverse concept we can't teach. And who defines that? Mrs. Oberheim, you gave an example that you would be fine with To Kill a Mockingbird and some other examples. But that's here and now, and we'd be adopting a resolution for in the future. And what if somebody else decides, well, that's not good, that's divisive? What is divisive and what's not divisive, and that's why I can support it.
Well, and I was taking copious notes, as Bill noticed during the meeting. Mr. Taylor mentioned that we should be teaching real disparities and understanding our unvarnished past. Mr. Ringer mentioned that he learned about communism in high school, and I guess I couldn't quite tell if you thought that was beneficial to opening your eyes or not. And Mrs. Ringer talked about the Japanese internment camps. And again, just the way it's written now, any of those, to me, could be viewed as prohibited in the language of the resolution.
I just want to say, and make sure everybody knows, I didn't introduce this resolution because I felt that CRT and the like was being taught in our schools now. I introduced that resolution as a safeguard for the future. And it's easy for somebody to sit here and say, it would never happen in Montoursville. You tell the people from 100, 200 years ago that said the same thing about things that happened, you tell them, look at what they did and what happened to them because they said that same exact thing. It was a safeguard. It wasn't because I felt that it's in the school district now.
If we deal with this, is this working? Yeah. If we deal with this now, I think when you look on both sides, I mean, it's not going to be a good ending for any of us. And as a whole here, I think that's the reason we did what we did tonight. The other thing is too, Ron, is, you know, when you put the cart before that horse sometimes, it really complicates things, and that's exactly the direction we would have headed down. I'm along with Bill and Ron and anyone else that it has no room to be placed in this district, and it won't be. And just because we did what we did tonight does not mean it's going to happen, because it's not going to. I mean, it just isn't. I mean, I commend everybody here that are passionate about what they believe, and that's what this country is about, is believing what you believe in and doing it in a manner where you have understanding. One gentleman got up and spoke about understanding. We need that more than ever in this country, and I know I get criticized a little bit by some people that you gotta be this way, you gotta be that way, but you know, when I look here, there's not a whole lot of people here. There's not a whole lot. You know where the most of them are? They're at home, with their families, doing what they do. And, you know, that's okay. You know, but at the end of the day, it's not gonna get done. You know, that's where your majority lies. They're all at home, doing what they want to do. And, you know, the adamant people that you see here, they truly believe what they believe in, and I respect that. I'm not going to take that lightly, and I won't take it lightly, but the reasons I did what I did tonight were more so to protect than it was to enable. And if we would have voted on this, we would have enabled a lot worse than what we're going to deal with when we have to make that decision. We'll deal with it then. And if there's anybody on this board that would want to see it You know, there ain't nobody in this room that should hate anybody. I don't hate anybody. I mean, there's times I'd like to, but you know, then the Holy Spirit, the good Lord gets me and tells me otherwise. You know, that's just my belief. I'm entitled to it. I can share it. And, you know, at the end of the day, people, we better start finding common good somewhere along the line. And, you know, maybe the Montoursville Area School District can be a place where that stops. Oh, yeah.
Before we adjourn or have public comment, I just want to, Mr. Schemmel, request a special meeting before school starts of the school board to discuss a potential revision of the health and safety plan based on the insurgence of the Delta variant of COVID and the American Academy of Pediatric recommendations and the CDC COT guidelines.
Just wear your mask.
I am looking at community health and I'm asking for a special meeting.
It's the board meeting right now. It's not time for public comment yet.
We that request to you, so that'll, all those written, I'll take it as written, but there will be 2 additional requests for the special meeting. So send me an email. If anybody wants to have a special meeting, please send me an email tonight or tomorrow requesting that special meeting for purposes of revisiting the health and safety plan. All right, we have just a few minutes left. I felt you needed to hear from us, but give you a few minutes to say a word or two to us, and then.
Is this on?
Go ahead.
Well, Greg, you know what, I'll give my time to you. I'm sorry you folks kicked the can down the road. Mr. Ruffing, thanks for your response. I appreciate when you folks do answer me, but you kicked the can down the road and there's a cancer. And if you think that cancer is not going to come to this school district, then you're being naive. To say the least, I'm disappointed in what happened tonight because the headline tomorrow is going to read, Montoursville Board fails to pass resolution to block CRT. And underneath that, I'm sure that it's going to state, or I would state, that the board voted that discrimination is acceptable based on color, sex, sexual preferences. It's a disappointment. You cannot kick this can down the road. You need to address it. Thank you.
I have a lot to cover, so I'm going to try and do this as quickly as possible, so just bear with me. Greg Stapp, 201 Windy Hill Lane. I want to start by saying anybody who's ever attended our meetings, and I realize probably none of the people in this group have except for Mr. Snell, I'm one of the biggest proponents for the statement, divided we are weak, united we are strong. Our movement, the Patriot Movement, is about freedom. We want all people to be free. But I also would open my comments by reminding you of Sir Edmund Burke. All it takes for evil to persist is for good men to do nothing. Amen. Critical race theory is here today. It took me 5 to 18 seconds. Not using Google, as I've advised you. You can use Mozilla Firefox, DuckDuckGo. Okay, Google is part of the Great Reset. If you people don't know about the Great Reset, you don't understand we're in the greatest spiritual battle in the history of our nation, then you need to wake up. You need to wake up. This is a spiritual battle. This is good versus evil. When I did a search, the first article that came up was from a publication called the National File. It is in Haverford. I have spoken with Brenda Oberheim, with Mark Scaringi, who's an attorney that represented Trump in the case here in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. He is fighting critical race theory in Carlisle and in Camp Hill. They have already created a task force. They are calling it Jedi training. Sounds cool, right? Justice, equality, diversity, inclusion. That's not what it's about. It's about the opposite of Martin Luther King. It's about your color determines who you are. Get online, find the video of the Penn State professor sitting there holding a young black man and telling him he's worthless and trash because of his color. And he lets him talk to him that way. This is the world that critical race theory is creating, and it's wrong. It's wrong. You must fight back, and you must fight back now. The battle is here, it's on your shores, and it's coming, I promise you. You need to take a stand. With regard to the mask, I also want to remind this board that Title 21 USC 360BBB-E requires you to provide informed consent before you can make anyone wear a mask. That informed consent should tell you about bacterial pneumonia, hypoxia. It should also tell you that under Title 21, because it's EUA approved, that you're not required to wear it. Okay? If you're not giving out informed consent or you don't have that paper, then you violated the Food and Drug Administration, and that can be done in the declaratory action in the civil court. I also want to let you know that my perspective is, based on what research I've done, is a child abuse. I've already advised the district attorney that if any steps are taken to remask the children, I will be calling Child Line. I'll be encouraging other people to do the same. There will be an investigation. There'll have to be about what's there. And we're going to get into court, and you're going to pay $5,000, $10,000, $15,000. I do it all the time. I hire expert witnesses. I'm not concerned about it. We're going to use the Fry and Dauber standard. We're going to find out whether masks are actually dangerous or not. And the expert has to be qualified to testify in court. And then we'll find out. It might be a year, it might be 2 years. But I'm telling you, the mask will not come back. Not without a fight.
Okay, should have someone wiping this down in between people. The person that runs in wipes everything down. Since it's surging. I actually wrote this prior to the last comments, so I would like to personally thank you, the Montoursville Area School District, for the Montoursville Area School District Health and Safety Plan. Please know that we are aware masking is still a hot topic, but I would like to make it known that we are trusting you will stick to your word, that you will leave the decision in the parents' hands and not try to force our kids to mask. I attended the Pennsylvania Senate Education Committee hearing focused on questioning the DOH and the PDE. Senator Mastriano and Senator Martin focused on the low risk COVID has pertaining to children versus the dangers and concerns of masking children. Did this just go quiet, or was it just me? Okay. I would like for all of you to take the time to listen to this meeting. Please pay special attention to Mr. Scott Martin discussing liability to solicitors and districts attempting to mask students. Also, pertaining to our current solicitor, do we need a solicitor from down around Philadelphia that we are paying approximately 5 hours of driving time to every meeting? So from what I could gather from some past meetings, is he's paid $190 an hour. So if we're paying him $500, if we're paying him for 5 hours, you can do the math on what we're paying him just to get here and to go back. I understand that you couldn't find a solicitor from around here that would come looking for the job. So maybe you should go look for someone to take this job that we're not going to be wasting as much taxpayer money on. So as much as I appreciate him being here, it's no, disrespect to him personally. Montgomery County will be able to represent the Montoursville parents in the way that we want him to. At the last meeting, while we discussed our health and safety plan, the new solicitor showed his lack of support for our ideas. He didn't have a mask on then, with disapproving body language and facial expressions. I hope we can make sure our solicitor will look out for our school district and our students, not bring Montgomery County opinions to Montoursville. So let me pull this over here. Not wanting to deal with current politics does not make it unnecessary to take a stand with a vote and not just in an email. What I heard from a few of you was, this would have really just brought a lot of bad things to the district. As parents, we can't be afraid. And we need you to stand up and not be afraid to say, we don't want divisive CRT in our district, and I'm willing to put a vote to it. I've spoken with one of you who talks about, there's this really big fight coming.
Well, guess what? We have to fight the small fights that are here now. And if we can't do that and have the guts to vote on it and stand up for our district, then we're lost. And so when people stand here and say, well, then you just gotta go. Well, then you do just gotta go. So we should have taken this vote on CRT, on the resolution for CRT, and I'm really hoping that you don't let Mrs. Mathers push masks on us as if she's the end-all be-all to any nurse or doctor or any proof that we don't need masks, because that's what happened last year. Her opinion seemed to outweigh the parents' opinion, and everybody said, well, what should we do next, Dr. Mathers? We don't want to know anything more from you as the parents. I can promise you that. So when you're the one,
No personal attacks.
okay, when you are the one who brings up that you would like this on the agenda to start pushing your masks again, we are highly offended. And you're not masking our kids. It's not fair to them. It is harmful to them, and there is no reason for it. Thank you.
We have gone past the 2.5 hours. Our options are: one, suspend the policy, suspend the half-hour extra add-on, and suspend that and just extend the meeting. Or the second thing is we adjourn, but I will sit here and listen to anybody that wants to speak to me. So your choice, Gordon, but we have to adjourn. So how would you like to play this?
I have about 1.5 minutes, if that makes any difference.
I move to extend by 10 minutes.
Well, that's not a motion. We have to suspend the policy. Or we adjourn and stay here and afford her the courtesy to speak to us. I would do that.
I would do that.
Okay, then we will honor what you have to say, but we're going to adjourn. Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
To a second? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Aye. Meeting is adjourned. Please speak to us.
Okay.
Yes, sure, go ahead.
I lost my microphone, I think, too.
You have no microphone?
If any board members need to dismiss themselves, you may, please do, but.
Karen, you have the microphone?
Is this, I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I just had a couple of specific comments to make to some of your comments. So, Mr. Woodruff, you said you just want it to all go away. You don't want to worry about what is going on outside of our local community. With all respect, Mr. Ruffing, I'm sorry. Yeah. With my glasses on, I can only see up close. No, with all respect to that statement, that's exactly why we are currently living in a society where we are watching our historic statues being torn down. We're watching Olympians and athletes openly disrespecting the American flag. There were some misrepresentations made tonight about critical race theory, and I want to highlight this misrepresentation again. You were told that CRT is only being taught in some law schools. That is absolutely a lie. That ideology has creeped into all of our schools at the lowest level. And I told you when I came up here before that the teachers union, which actually I am a member of, the NEA, the teachers union just voted, they're endorsing CRT, and they voted to have it placed in schools from kindergarten through 12th grade. Mr. Schimmel, your response, you trust the teachers. Mr. Albert, it's just not going to happen. That is just not enough for us. We would like some assurance that critical race theory will not form part of the curriculum in the Montoursville area school district. Thank you.
First, let me say I appreciate you sticking around to hear this. If you think that critical race theory isn't already in your schools, you are naive. It doesn't have to be part of the official curriculum to be in there. Earlier I mentioned that I've been studying communism since I was a sophomore in high school. The reason I started studying communism is because some of my teachers turned me into a communist. They were teaching Marxism. I seriously doubt it was part of the curriculum. But I was taught that. As a sophomore in high school, I became a communist and an atheist because they were teaching that too. But I was very interested, so I studied it. And by my junior year, I realized that it was stupid, that it would not do what it pretended it was going to do, and that it was immoral. Which is strange as an atheist finding anything immoral, but I did. It was another 20 years before I found out about all the lies they told me to turn me into an atheist. I haven't told this story in public before, but I think it's important that you know that just because you don't know what's being taught doesn't mean it's not being taught.
Give an example.
For an example,
Give an example of it in our schools.
it was taught to me.
No, in our school, in Montoursville. Give an example of Montoursville.
I went to Montoursville.
No, I mean, today.
Today, I don't go to Montoursville now.
No,
I don't have any kids who are students here.
I know, so you don't have an example.
I don't have an example.
And if there were.
But listen, I've been to meetings and I've heard some of your teachers get up here and speak, and I know where they're coming from. Some of them are sneaking this stuff in. I guarantee it. And even if you can't, I can't prove it, which I can't.
Okay, you don't need to prove it, okay.
No. Okay, fine. None of them are teaching it, but they're probably going to. And if you don't take,
We're gonna watch for it. We care about it.
are you watching every class, every minute?
Nope.
You got cameras in the classrooms?
Nope.
I give up.
You should.
Okay, no, I care about these kids. I care about them, and they don't need to have that. Well, but I think you're being naive.
No, I'll be cautious and careful, but not naive. I'm aware. I'm not living in a bubble. I know better. I've got kids in the schools, so that's why I know more than you do right now. So please, don't insult us.
Well, I'll tell you what, not every kid had a teacher. Not everybody in my class became a communist, although I'm sure a lot of them have left
I knew better as a junior and sophomore.
Oh, I did as a junior too.
I knew better.
But the other thing is, you know what? I know better now too about all these things. I didn't know better then. I was a sophomore in high school. I didn't know everything. Well, I still don't know everything, but I know a lot more than I did then. So these kids are vulnerable.
They are.
And they only have us to look out for them.
They do.
And we need to do something to ensure it doesn't creep in, because you know what?
We will.
If it comes in and then you find out, it's going to be a little late.
No.
No?
Not too late. No, okay.
Good try, Paul.
All right. Thank you, board, for sticking around.